Just pick up on something. We're not going to fix free-to-air TV overnight. So you started by asking us what is our wish. So now we've gone down to discussing how we're going to make our wishes come true. they're not going to happen. I wish I had that one. But if I, for everyone who is a broadcaster and free-to-air TV, there are things. It's very basic business concept. You need to lower your costs and you need to increase your revenue. How do you lower your costs? We need to stop thinking of ourselves as not wanting to work with anybody in the entire MENA region. This conception of the single Arab market does not exist. I should be very happy to have a show that's on my channel in the Gulf, that is on a channel perhaps in Egypt that isn't so popular in the Gulf, that's also on a channel in Lebanon or Syria or Jordan, it doesn't matter. We don't have this mentality yet. Right now, it's when we go and buy even a format, right, we buy it from MENA. And we're so paranoid about all our other competitors who actually have zero reach and zero ratings in our key markets that are commercially relevant to us. So that's one thing we need to do. The other thing is we're too reliant on the traditional, spot media buyer model, volume rebates, whatever. We don't do any serious effort on product placement revenues, which actually could be quite handsome. In other parts of the world, the UK just legalized it recently. We don't have any regulation that covers the entire market here, so actually we could have done this a long time ago. But we didn't take advantage of it. Yes. So we have to face the reality that the business we're in will inherently be a business that's going to take a long time to become sustainable. So let's try to do things that are logical, and these are not rocket science things. They are things that are being done in other markets that we clearly see. Mobile, we keep talking about how it's so fantastic that mobile penetration is so high and smartphone penetration is so high. What have any of us as broadcasters done in mobile that actually made us money? We all are rushing to put our channels in HD, to put our channels on mobiles and iPads and whatever, and we've started off by giving them away for free. I could understand that if we were actually going after maintaining a share of a profitable market, but we don't have a profitable market. So we're missing another trick now. We're doing the same mistake with new technology that we've done when we all went on satellite. So we need to be more, as individual broadcasters, we need to be more cautious and more considerate of the steps that we're taking when we start giving away our content.
And Nick, what would you say to somebody who came to you, presumably they do, and say, I want to set up a channel here, presumably run a mile?
It's a question I get asked very regularly. The amount of times I've been asked the question, I want to launch a television channel, what should I do? And I have to say that the first thing I feel honor bound to do is manage the client's expectations, particularly on the revenue side, and get them focused on what they're really trying to achieve. Is it profile? Is it audience share? What is it? Because if it's purely about revenue, they need to understand the kind of market they're entering. And so, practically speaking, generally speaking, there's another agenda associated with the launch of a particular channel or a particular network, and we can actually work with them. But I do tend to focus also with service providers and entities that are supporting television channels. But taking RTL as an example, it was a very interesting exercise working with them on how they might look at this market, and somewhat surprising for them, I think, that process. But just going back to these earlier points, I think this question of piracy and audience dilution and so forth, the idea of regulation behind all this is very, very hard to manage at a pan-regional level. If practically speaking, Nilesat and Arabsat are the regulator, and I have an enormous respect and sympathy for Salah Hamza at Nilesat when he will have a channel go up, which the following day there'll be a phone call from Riyadh asking him to remove it for no particular reason, or a channel will go up that is playing DVDs straight from the souk, and there's no code of ethics that he can apply that is universally agreed upon. I mean, Dr. Riyadh is doing his best with the ASBU to try and to generate that code of ethics, but I think that life would become an awful lot simpler if broadcasting was a domestic affair rather than a pan-regional one. I realise that the pan-regional satellite players might have vested reasons for preferring not to have that route, but practically actually a product like OSN will always exist even in that market because it's able to leverage its deals in such a way to have a really compelling product offering. But whenever I speak to a client about launching a television channel, the first question is, what are you trying to achieve?
Do you see a future for people here to broadcast without being traditional broadcasters, perhaps to use online, to use mobile, to establish a presence without having a traditional?
About 3 years ago, I kind of jumped the fence from being pure satellite guy to sort of starting to recognise the merits of IPTV and the telco approach, because it offered this way of actually unlocking the tastes of individual viewers. I mean, in the end, it might be advertising revenues and it might be better value for content rights owners, but ultimately the viewer gets the channels they actually want on a country-by-country basis. So if you look at the demographics of the UAE, there's a significant Filipino population, a significant Pakistani population, Indian population. How well served are they by Nilesat? There are opportunities there, but it's the problem with the telco route is that, again, you're dealing with extremely cash-rich entities, and what tends to happen is you come across the same challenges in a different form. In my experience, the telcos are so concerned about losing the opportunity to be the content rights holders themselves and being perceived as just the pipe, that you have a whole other issue arising there, which again potentially will stifle entrepreneurship. So I think there's an endemic issue, which is if you've got the cash, you kind of want to spend it. So how you can ever completely overcome that, I don't know. It does exist in other markets, and as David pointed out, I mean, Rupert Murdoch spent a lot of money before he started generating positive cash. But in this market, I think the internet itself will provide some easement of this, because if you go beyond IPTV, we're now talking about platforms existing independently of even set-top boxes, and that might well be interesting. Although I have to say the research so far on connected TVs suggests that they're not really having the traction that we might have hoped. I mean, people might be correcting me on this, but at the moment it's still boxes and TVs versus internet and so forth.
And perhaps the best way you can actually see how that's happening is that we're operating in an environment now where, in theory, as broadcasters, we're under this massive threat from the internet, from connected TVs, from smart TVs, and all this OTT services. Yet, when you go to the program screenings in LA and MIPCOM, the portfolio of programming coming out of the networks and the global producers of content has never been richer. And the reality is people have never spent more time watching television than they are today. So on the one hand, you've got the theory of technology is coming in to eat our lunch. And this, on the other side, you've got the reality that people are watching more television than they ever watched before. Even the telcos. The telcos globally have gone through this, we've got to be in the content business because otherwise we can't make our margins. And then suddenly they're all crying because their margins are all dropping off the cliff because they keep giving away their primary product. And even the telcos are waking up saying, wait a minute, are we expanding our own cost bases too much by trying to compete by getting into a bidding war for content with traditional broadcasters? Why don't we go to the traditional broadcaster and get the content from them and keep the prices down? So I think the models will evolve, but I don't think we certainly don't have the view that television as we know and love it is dead. Quite the opposite. I think it's a thriving environment. And yes, there's some competition. Great, bring it on.
Do you think these other models will just are they just enhancers of the content?
I think when you look at what's happening in the US as a precursor to what could happen to us, the ironic thing is that the more there are options there are for people to find content, the more individual brands behind that content become important. So HBO is an even more important creator of content with the advent of all these other platforms that it's available on than when it was only a cable channel. Because now people know how to associate this name with quality product, and so when they're on Hulu or when they're on the web and they're searching, or if their Google TV ever figures out what it wants to do and tells them about it, and HBO lets them to see it, they'll know that this is something worth watching. So the trick for broadcasters, I think, with platforms so that they don't become extinct because of them, is to realize that it's not only about broadcasting, it's also about being synonymous with quality content and owning, and maybe not all, but at least some of that content. Because if you want to re-exploit your productions, you need to own the rights to exploit them on different platforms, you need to own the rights to exploit them with telcos. If you're just somebody who's passing things through, then at some point you will be marginalized.
And we have to adapt. How have we reacted to the fact that you can get content downloaded on the internet is that we've had to bring our windows forward, so we now broadcast some beautiful 1080i HD content within 24 hours of this international release. The windows that are operating in the Middle East are the earliest windows anywhere in the world. We're way ahead of the UK, we're way ahead of everywhere else. And that's the way to compete. So yes, does that bring a strain on our broadcast operations people? Damn right it does. We're turning product around in 24 hours. But it also means the consumer goes, wow, I can watch it in HD on my TV screen, why would I go to the internet? So we've had to adapt the way we work. But there's ways of competing with the fact that content is available in a different way.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left, and I'm sure we have some questions, so I'll open it
Uh-oh.
up. Sorry?
The real landscape, I'll be trouble now.
It's that point about regulation.
Yeah, I think it was Nick's phone call that's going to be. Dr. Yes, we got the mic.